Alright, so in the last video, as a recap, we learned about how to style different elements on our page. So for example, we made the background here yellow and the font color blue, as ugly as it looks. We define that here in the style property of our H1. So it has a color of blue and a background color of yellow, and it also has text align center. So that's cool, but I want to talk about one problem here, and then I'll show how we're going to fix it. So the one problem is we have a ton of these little ingredients here, which are all represented by these LIs. So let's say I wanted to style one of these. So let's say I would go like style, and just for simplicity, I'll just say font size 20 pixels. The problem is I would have to put the same styling for every single one of these list items because of course we want our website to look, consistent, and we don't want like one of these to look like 20 pixels and the rest of them to be a different font size. So it's kind of error prone because I mean, what happens if I want to change the font size to a different value? Maybe to 21 pixels. I have to make sure that I get every single one of them, or else one of them will look off. Or what happens if later I come in and I add a new ingredient to the sauce? So, these kinds of error-prone things we try to avoid, and we have this sort of in programming we have a saying called "Don't repeat yourself," which has an acronym of DRY. You want to keep your code dry, meaning you don't want to repeat the same thing over and over because it makes it hard to maintain. So luckily for us, we have a way to solve this problem. So rather than putting the same font size everywhere, we're going to declare the style that we want for these list items here in a very different way. So let me show you. I'm going to remove this first. And before we get to this specific one with the LI, I'm going to go over I'm going to do the same technique, but using the styles we already have. So I'm going to start with the H1 over here. And rather than style this one over here the way we did it, which we would call an inline style because we're styling it in line with the H1, there's another way we can do that. So it works like this. Basically, in the head property, we're going to make a new tag called style. And inside of here, we're going to put the syntax for something called CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets, which right now probably doesn't mean anything, but this is one of the core pillars of front-end software development for making web pages. And the style is actually not incredibly different from here, but let me just show you. In this case, what I'm going to say is, for all of the H1s on my page, I'm going to open up some braces, and this is how I want to style the H1s. Everything I put inside of these braces here, I'm going to style H1s in that same exact way. So the syntax actually is pretty similar to here. I'm going to actually cut this out over here, and I'm going to paste it over here. And you can see that the syntax highlighting is a little bit friendlier to us now. And I'm going to put that final semicolon. But basically it's it. It's just like we defined it inline for the inline styling. We're going to put the name of the property we want to style, followed by the value that we want that property to be, in this case blue, and a semicolon to mark that this is the end of that line. And then we're going to put a new style and a new style like this. So it's pretty straightforward to do it that way, and we no longer need this style property. And I'll just prove that this works. I'm going to save the page, and I'm going to come here and refresh. And we still see that it says Sesame Chicken in blue with the yellow background. So you can see that we basically just moved the declaration of the styling from inside here into this style tag. And actually, we can put multiple declarations like this within the same style tag. So let me show you how that works. For example, here we have H2, and we have the font family of monospace with the color of orange. I'm going to just cut that out, and I'm remembering that what I'm going to put here is the tag over here. So I'm going to say H2, and I'll paste that style, and I'll save that. And now I'll refresh, and you can see that this styling is staying the same. Actually, we have another side effect here that before the instructions here didn't have that style, but now because it's in H2, which I'll show you where the instructions are right here, because it's in H2, it also inherits the styling that we declared up there in the style tag. And just for cleanup, I'm gonna remove this one, so we don't need that. Which is actually, it's not too bad in this case, right? I mean, we probably want our H2s to look consistent so that, our website looks consistent. Again, ugly as it is right now, which is just really more for instruction at this point, is you would never want to make a website, look like this, but it's good to just make it really obvious what is being styled. So we can continue with that. For example, all of these were declared with a font size of 30 pixels. So those were the H3s here. So let me declare that. H3, font size 30 pixels. I'll save that. And I can actually remove this one, but I can also remove all the other ones. And I'm going to select that. I know the other ones are exactly the same, so I'm going to actually press Command D to select both of those, and I'm going to erase them. So I'll save, and I'll refresh. And you can see that nothing visually changed because I basically just moved the declaration. But you can also see that if I wanted to change now the font size of all those H3s, maybe it's a little bit too big, so I want to put 26 pixels. I'll save that and refresh. And everything got a little bit smaller, but I only had to change where I defined it in one place. So that's pretty nice. That's actually exactly what we're going for. And I mentioned that, we have list items here. Let's say I want the color here to be maybe gray. So I can say li, and I want to make the color of that to be gray. So I'll save that, and I'll refresh. And you can see it grayed up a little bit. One of the side effects, though, again, was that it actually gave me all the instructions down here also in gray. And that's because they're also list items. But maybe I didn't want the instructions to be gray. Maybe I just wanted the ingredient list items to be gray. So how can I say I only want those list items to be gray? Well, there's a way you can do that. And there's many different ways to declare this section here, the part before the opening curly brace. There's many different ways to declare it, and we're going to go through all those at some point. But a really simple one is where you have two elements right next to each other, separated by a space. So for example, I'm going to say ULLI. So ULLI means all list items that are descendants of an unordered list. So that means that if there's an unordered list and then somewhere one of its descendants is a list item, then the list item will be styled with color gray. So if I save that, you'll see that these ones are staying gray because these are an unordered list. If you look at how these list items are rendered, they're inside of a unordered list. But these ones down here are now have come back to the default styling of just like a black color because the instructions are not in a UL, they're in an OL, an ordered list. So that's one way you can be a little bit more specific about how you want, like what things on the page you want to be selected. And by the way, these are called selectors. This part before the opening curly brace is called the selector. So that's basically defining what item on the page is going to be styled with whatever properties you give it inside of the parentheses. Like what things should be styled blue with the background color of yellow and text align center. Well, in this case, that's H1. But I could have said, maybe H1, which means an H1 who is a descendant of another H1, which is, of course, very weird. But if I save it, you'll see that I'll come and refresh. Now that styling goes away because it no longer applies to this H1 over here because it's not a child, it's not some descendant of another H1. So that's just an example of, ways that you can be a little bit more specific. Now, like I said, there's actually a lot of different ways you can be more specific. You can say maybe an item should only be, it has to be a direct descendant, meaning a child of the of another element, or maybe it could be two elements that are sitting next to each other, which are called siblings. So there's a whole bunch, but I just wanted to give the basic framework of how you can organize your styles a little bit better. And this is going to be a lot closer to the typical way that we're going to define styles. It's going to be very rare to put styles over here, which are called inline styles. Again, we're going to probably be moving away from that mostly, but there are also times where sometimes it's just, it makes sense to put an inline style. I'll just make sure I save that and refresh to get back to where we were. And that's basically all I wanted to go over in this particular lesson. And we'll see more in the next one. Thanks for watching. Again, don't be afraid to hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to make sure you get all of the newest videos. And throw a comment if you have any questions. See you in the next one.